Welcome to the History AI podcast, where the past comes alive with facts, anecdotes, and a dash of humor. Here are your hosts, Chuck and Marco.
Hey folks, welcome back to the History AI podcast. I'm Chuck.
And I'm Marco. Before we dive into today's epic story, quick favor, if you love what we do, hit that subscribe button and leave us a 5-star review. It really helps more history buffs find the show.
Seriously, every rating is like a catapult shot in our favor.
And today we're rewinding to the early 13th century for one of the most dramatic showdowns between a king and his own nobles, the Siege of London in 1215 and the Magna Carta that followed.
It's got all the ingredients of a medieval thriller: rebellion, betrayal, taxes, war in France, and a king who just didn't know when to quit.
Spoiler alert, that king is John. As in the bad King John. You know, the guy even the Robin Hood movies can't save.
In that Siege of London, it wasn't just a protest, it was a political earthquake. So buckle up. This is the story of how a group of fed-up barons stormed the capital, cornered a king, and accidentally gave us the foundation of modern government.
Let's set the stage. It's the early 1200s, and England is heading for a meltdown. King John, youngest son of Henry II and brother to Richard the Lionheart, is driving his kingdom straight into a wall. He's lost most of England's territories in France, and he's burning bridges faster than he can build them.
And he's not just unpopular, he's despised. John was squeezing the nobility for every coin they had, levying brutal taxes, demanding random loans, and punishing those who resisted by seizing estates or tossing people in prison.
And things get even worse with the church. John picks a fight with Pope Innocent III over the Archbishop of Canterbury. When he refuses to accept the Pope's choice, the Pope places England under interdict, meaning no sacraments, no burials, no weddings. The whole kingdom is spiritually frozen.
John's response? He seizes church lands and profits from the crisis. Which means by 1215, everybody, nobles, clergy, even some of the common folk, is ready to see him reined in.
Among the barons rising against John was a figure who may have inspired one of England's most enduring legends, Robin Hood. Some historians think the real Robin might have been Fulk FitzWarin, a nobleman and former outlaw who clashed with King John, lost his lands, then fought to reclaim them.
Fulk's story is wild. He grew up at court with John, turned against him, and led a guerrilla-style resistance from the forests of Shropshire. He stole from royal forces, defied the king's men, and defended local lords being crushed by John's regime. Sound familiar?
If Robin Hood had a real historical twin, Fulk FitzWarin's resume checks a lot of boxes. He wasn't stealing to give to the peasants, he was striking back on behalf of the barons, the class being bled dry by royal demands.
Now, fast forward to May 1215. The rebel barons are done talking. They march on London, a bold move meant to force John to the bargaining table. But here's the twist, they don't take the city right away.
That's right. Even though many Londoners supported the rebellion, it was the cardinals of London who intervened. They stepped in at the gates, urging peace and delaying the barons' entry. Their diplomatic efforts bought the king a little more time.
But only a little. A few days later, the barons made their move and seized control of London. With the capital in rebel hands, King John was boxed in, militarily and politically. It was checkmate, medieval style.
This wasn't just a siege. It was a declaration. The barons had the capital, and now they wanted concessions. Big ones. And John had no choice but to listen.
And that, folks, sets the stage for one of the most important documents in Western legal history. June 15, 1215. On a quiet meadow called Runnymede, along the Thames River, King John sat face to face with the rebel barons. Behind him, royal guards and scribes. Across from him, the barons who had just seized London. Neither side trusted the other.
And between them? A parchment not yet legendary, but about to be. This was the Magna Carta, Latin for Great Charter. What started as a peace treaty would become one of the most influential documents in legal history.
But let's be clear, this wasn't about the rights of all people, at least not yet. The Magna Carta was written by and for the barons. It was a power check against the king, not a universal declaration of rights. That said, what it introduced was revolutionary.
Let's break down what the Magna Carta actually did. Clause 39, probably the most famous, declared, "No free man shall be seized or imprisoned except by the lawful judgment of his equals or by the law of the land."
In other words, due process. No more arbitrary arrests by the king. You needed a trial, a fair hearing, something that would echo into future legal systems around the world.
It also said the king couldn't impose new taxes without the common council of the realm, basically, get the baron's permission first. It limited feudal payments, protected church rights, and even included safeguards for merchants.
Here's a cool one. Clause 41 protected the freedom of movement for merchants, allowing them to come and go without royal harassment. So even back then, commerce had clout.
But let's not romanticize it too much. The Magna Carta didn't apply to serfs or commoners, and it didn't set up a parliament. It was still very much about noble privileges. But it was the first crack in the idea of absolute monarchy.
Of course, King John had zero intention of honoring it. He signed it, well, sealed it, but within weeks, he wrote to Pope Innocent III begging for help. And the Pope delivered.
The Pope declared the Magna Carta null and void. He called it shameful and demeaning, forced on the king under duress. So, in Rome's eyes, the whole thing never happened.
And John? He took it as a green light for revenge. He raised an army and launched a brutal campaign against the barons who had forced his hand. Churches that supported the rebels were sacked. Lands were confiscated. Families were punished.
This kicked off the First Barons' War. The rebels, realizing John wasn't backing down, actually invited Prince Louis of France to invade England and claim the throne. That's how serious it got.
So to recap, the Magna Carta was signed, annulled, and war broke out, all in the same year. It didn't bring peace, but it planted an idea. The king was not above the law.
So, what happened after the dust settled? King John died in October 1216, likely from dysentery during the Civil War. The rebel barons were still in open revolt, and Prince Louis of France had actually landed in England and taken control of large parts of the country.
But John's death changed everything. His son, Henry III, was just 9 years old. The regents ruling in his name, led by the incredibly savvy William Marshal, one of the greatest knights of the era, made a strategic move. They reissued the Magna Carta.
This was genius. By confirming the charter, the regents convinced many rebel barons to switch sides and support the new boy king. They were tired of war, and a fresh start, with their rights confirmed, was appealing. So while the original Magna Carta didn't last long in practice, its impact never really faded. It was the beginning of the idea that rulers have rules too.
So in 1217, and again in 1225, the Magna Carta was reissued. Each time, it got a little more refined. Some of the more rebellious clauses were dropped, but the core remained: limits on royal power, legal protections, and the idea that the king couldn't just do whatever he wanted. The Magna Carta would be reissued multiple times in the centuries to follow, each version slowly becoming less about immediate politics and more about long-term principles. Principles that would eventually inspire the English Bill of Rights, the U.S. Constitution, and more.
Now, let's zoom out. Over the centuries, the Magna Carta became more than just a peace treaty. It became a symbol. By the 1600s, in the age of Stuart monarchs and the English Civil War, politicians like Sir Edward Coke were quoting the Magna Carta as a legal basis to resist the king.
In fact, when Charles I was beheaded in 1649 after a long fight with Parliament, defenders of liberty pointed back to Magna Carta. It was like a medieval receipt saying, "Hey, we've had this in writing for 400 years.
And it didn't stop in England. The American colonists looked to Magna Carta when they drafted their own declarations. The Fifth Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, guaranteeing due process. That's Magna Carta Clause 39, reincarnated.
Same with habeas corpus, the right to not be imprisoned without cause. It's one of the most powerful protections in modern legal systems, and it has its roots in the Magna Carta.
And let's not forget its influence on international law. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, drafted after World War II, echoes ideas first scribbled down in Runnymede.
Today, only 3 clauses from the original 1215 version remain on the books in the UK. But the idea of Magna Carta, of limits on power and the rule of law, is everywhere. From courtrooms to parliaments to protest movements.
It's pretty wild that a document written by and for a bunch of medieval landowners, who were mostly just trying to protect their own necks, would evolve into a global icon of justice and liberty.
And here's the twist, it wasn't meant to last. It was a temporary fix. But sometimes, even a short-lived agreement can echo through the centuries.
And that, folks, is the legacy of the Magna Carta. Not a perfect document and not a revolution, but a starting point. A first draft in the never-ending story of freedom and accountability. Thanks for joining us on this dive into the siege that shook a throne and the document that echoed through centuries.
If you enjoyed today's episode, drop us a 5-star review. It helps the History AI podcast reach more curious minds. Seriously, every review counts like a vote in a medieval baron's council.
Don't forget to subscribe and share it with your fellow history nerds. And if you've got episode ideas, shoot us a message on social media, we're always listening.
Also, check out our brand new merchandise, tees, mugs, and more. Links in the show notes. Rock your love of history wherever you go.
We'll be back next week with another evergreen episode, powered by AI and fueled by sheer historical obsession.
Until then, stay curious, stay skeptical, and remember, history isn't just about the past. It's about how we got here.
Bye, everyone.
Shadow of a tyrant's crown, the barons rode through field and town. With steel and oath they made their stand, for justice scorched this weary land. King John, a name the people feared, with coin and cruelty he steered. But London's gates swung open wide, the city took the rebel side. Raise your voice, let the trumpet sound, for rights were written on battleground. From London's siege to Runnymede, the people rose, the crown would bleed. Though kings may come and tyrants fall, the law must stand above them all. From 1215 to you and me, we hold the keys to liberty. Tale not told in simple terms, of scrolls and swords and silent worms, a buzz of change, a scribe's quick hand wrote limits kings must understand. No tax without the baron's nod, no jailing on a monarch's word, no seizure of a freeman's land, just cause must guide the royal hand. Raise your voice, let the trumpet sound, for rights were written on battleground. From London's siege to Runnymede, the people the crown would bleed. Though kings may come and tyrants fall, the law must stand above them all. From 1215 to you and me, we hold the keys to liberty. Parchment born from rebel steel, was meant to bind, was meant to heal. But John broke oaths and stoked the flame, and civil war returned again. Yet still that scroll, though torn and tried, inspired hearts the world wide. In colonies across the sea, it sparklet fires for you and me. Raise your voice, let the truth be told. The Magna Carta's brave and bold. It birthed a dream, it drew a line, that no man stands above the sign. Though time has passed and empires fade, the rights we have were dearly made. From London's walls to modern day, the people's voice will find its way.